The following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
Thank you, Tally Olson. We are Comfortably Zoned in a Vat O' Pine Tar, the podcast about the book. And my co-host is George Grimm, who is also my co-author as well. And we're privileged today. We have someone who is probably my oldest friend in podcasting and who's directly responsible for the podcast that I did becoming a network. Really, I had so much more to say, and I didn't even know it until Ronnie Rabinonowitz, friend of Jackie Robinson's, first appeared on my podcast. And so happy to have you back on the podcast. And I'd like to start with George getting to know you a little bit. He wrote a lot of, transcribed a lot of the podcasts and made it into a book. And you were his favorite set of podcasts to write about, and I'd like you to talk to Ronnie George Grimm.
Yes, those podcasts you did that I transcribed actually, they were always straight from the heart. You could tell that you really meant what you were saying, and there was a lot of love in them. And I mean, Your final meeting with Jackie that you described was so poignant. It was sad, and I really enjoyed your podcast, and also your insights about the Dodgers and Walter O'Malley and Branch Rickey. And it's just fantastic stuff. And I loved it.
Thank you, George. I appreciate it.
Something's ringing.
That's me.
Well, it happens.
He worried about my car insurance. Well, my car.
Okay. Ronnie, what impressed you most about the podcast network? Let me ask you that.
Well, I think it's a great avenue to discuss baseball and to discuss other topics also. I found it very interesting, and I love being on your show. It was terrific. Now I'm doing another podcast with Peter Trunk and Robert Cole on a television podcast called Dodgers Chronicles, Baseball Dodgers Chronicles. So I'm having fun with that too.
Good. George, take it.
Okay. The podcasts are great. They're very laid back. You can branch off into any kind of subject you want, as long as it's within the realms of baseball. And they're really interesting to listen to because I had to listen to them, each one of them that I did about 2 or 3 times to get it right. And I enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it.
Good. Yeah, I think it's terrific. I really enjoy it too.
Okay, Ronnie, let me ask you about your first meeting as a kid with Jackie Robinson.
My first what?
Your first meeting when you were a kid with Jackie.
Oh, my father wrote Jackie a letter and told him how much I admired him. And Jackie wrote back with an autographed picture. And he said next time the club's in Milwaukee playing the Braves, he'd love to meet me. At that time, the Atlanta Braves were the Milwaukee Braves. So we met after a game at Milwaukee County Stadium. We went down to the locker room and waited for him to come out. And when he came out, I ran up to him with about 50 other kids, And I said, Jackie, I'm Ronnie Rabinonowitz. Do you remember me? He said, sure I do. My dad's standing over my shoulder, and he says, sure, Jackie, with the thousands of letters you get, how would you remember? He says, no, I remember. Your dad wrote me on lawyer stationery. My father was an attorney. And from that time on, he said, stay in touch with me. So when I got home, I wrote him a letter, Jackie Robinson, Stamford, Connecticut. No address, no zip code. He got it.
Wow.
He wrote to me, Ronnie Rabinowitz, Sheboygan, Wisconsin. No address, no zip code. I got it. And that's how it all started. That's how it all started. And, of course, we had many lunches and dinners together. We had many meetings in Milwaukee. Dodgers would come to Milwaukee, I would say 3 or 4 times a year. And each one was either 3 or 4 games. So we saw them a lot. We saw him a lot. I met him in 1953. That was the first year. I'm sorry?
I'm sorry, I interrupted you.
Oh, it was 1953. That was the first year that Milwaukee had a franchise, the Braves. They moved from Boston.
Okay, so, now in 1953, when you first met Jackie, did you realize how lucky you were, or did you think that every kid?
I didn't. As a kid, I loved him because he was helping my Dodgers win pennants.
Okay.
But as I got older, I realized how much more than just baseball he was. What he did for this world, what he did for this country. I mean, they say Babe Ruth changed baseball. Jackie Robinson changed America, and he did it alone. Right. And I've written a book called Always Jackie, a children's book that came out this year. I picked that title because in almost all of his letters, he would end always, Jackie.
Huh.
So Amazon has selected the best nonfiction children's book of the year. And it's been doing very, very well. Yeah.
Congratulations on that, Ronnie. That's terrific.
Thank you.
Did Jackie come to your home as a visitor?
He never did. He was supposed to come to my home. We had made arrangements. He was going to come to my home. He was going to a little town called Manitowoc, Wisconsin, which is between Sheboygan and Green Bay. And we had made arrangements that he was going to stay overnight at our home and speak to my high school the next day. And I was so excited. My dad and I, a couple of weeks earlier than that, were out on the front lawn playing catch, and a neighbor came by. My dad's telling him that Jackie Robinson's going to stay at our house. He says, you mean to tell me you'd let Jackie Robinson sleep in your house? My dad said, of course I would. I'd love to have him build a house next to me. And he said, boy, I sure wouldn't. My dad looked him straight in the eye, and he said, Ben, I don't think that would be the real question. I think the real question would be whether Jackie Robinson would want to live next to you. So he really told him. He got to Manitowoc, and unfortunately, Jackie had to go back to New York on business. And I was so disappointed. He was disappointed. And matter of fact, he was given, the mayor of Manitowoc presented him with this key to the city, a big wrought iron key with red, white, and blue ribbons on it. And they presented it to him. And as we're taking him back to the airport, I'm sitting in the back seat with him, and he has his key on his lap, and he said, Ronnie, will you keep this for me? I said, of course I would. Yeah.
Wow. That's terrific. And you've kept it to this day, I'm sure.
Yeah, well, actually, you know what happened? That key, a friend of mine had polio. He was a big baseball fan. So I ended up giving him the key as a memento to baseball and Jackie Robinson.
Wow.
Yeah.
Excuse me if I ask you a question that I asked on previous podcasts.
Sure.
what made your dad, a Midwesterner, become a liberal human being?
Well, my dad was always very progressive, and he was very much involved in politics. He, besides being a lawyer, he was the treasurer of the Democratic Party in the state of Wisconsin. And later on, he was the national committeeman from the state of Wisconsin. And he was the first Wisconsin politician to endorse Jack Kennedy for president. And Jack and Bobby were very close friends to my parents, especially to my dad. And matter of fact, both of them stayed at our home one night before he was president. He was a senator at the time. But he always fought for the underdog, my dad did. He was always worked with the union people, and and it was amazing. He could walk with the president of the United States, or he could walk with a common laborer, and he treated them all the same. He was an amazing man.
That's great.
Amazing man. If you had to pick one thing that you got from your dad, what was that?
One thing that I got from my dad?
Yeah.
I would say it was to treat people the right way and fight for, I fight for civil rights too, and all that for the downtrodden and underdog. I've always been that way. And I think that's the thing that was pretty amazing that he taught me. And he taught me that just by observance, by watching him.
Okay. George.
Yes, Ron, I'd like to ask you what you think of modern-day baseball.
Modern-day baseball, I don't like it as much as the old baseball. I don't like all this athletic business. Some of the things in the game I'm not crazy about. I'm used to pitchers pitching a whole game, a complete game. Yeah, unheard of today. Yeah. So it's still baseball, and I love baseball. But if I had a choice, it would be changed back to the normal way.
Right. Now let me lay something on you that I just heard on the news today that'll blow you both away. PETA, the people who are interested in animal rights, who I usually support wholeheartely, they want to change the name of the bullpen to the arm barn because
I heard that.
It's a derogatory towards farm animals, towards bulls.
Yeah. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
I mean, it's Meshuggah. It's Meshuggah. Absolutely nuts.
George knows from Meshuggah because you had a Jewish godfather. Am I
have
correct?
A Jewish godfather, right.
But it's really crazy. The arm pen, ridiculous.
Yes, I know.
Totally nuts.
Like it really makes a difference to anybody, including the bulls.
Like a bull's going to give a crap whether.
I know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, absolutely nuts.
Yeah, but as far as modern day baseball is concerned, I don't like the posing. I don't like the guys hitting the ball and posing at home plate. I don't like the fact that some of the players look so damn sloppy. I mean, uniforms are supposed to be uniform. You look at some of those old Yankee team pictures, and they all got their arms folded, and their pants are all the same length, and the socks are all the same height. And now you got guys who look like they're going to trip over their pants, really.
Yeah.
And it's just I just don't like it. It's just not what I want to watch anymore.
No,
okay.
No. I still love it, but I agree with you.
Yeah.
Ronnie, you got to know Rachel Robinson, probably because of the years. You've known her over the years. You probably know her better than you did Jackie.
Yeah, well, she's an amazing lady. She's 98 years old, God bless her. And she's just terrific. She's an inspiration to. She's like the first lady of baseball, in my opinion. She started the year after he passed away. She started the Jackie Robinson Foundation, which is a scholarship program for children of color and minorities to go to college. They have the greatest graduation rate of any scholarship program in the United States, 98%, which is way, way double the national average. And Jackie would be so proud because education was so important to him. And he always encouraged me and other kids to work hard and stay in school and things like that.
Okay. I contend that Jackie probably, the experiment of bringing him in, probably would have failed were it not for Rachel's support.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
You elaborate on that?
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Imagine her sitting in the audience, in the crowd, in the stands, and watching the catcalls that they're calling her husband, watching the balls that they're throwing at his head. And remember, in those days, there was no helmets. There was baseball caps. And spiking him and all this other crap, throwing black cats on the field. I mean, it was horrible. And, I mean, she was the anchor for him. She absolutely was. And as just as important as Jackie is, he's not the only one important.
Right. Peter Golenbach, in his book on the Bums, basically got an extended interview with Rachel. And the one story that sticks out in my head is them going, Jackie and Rachel, going to their first spring training.
Yes.
Can you talk about that?
What a story that was. You know, Jackie was born in Carroll, Georgia, but his mother, this is an amazing story too. His mother, as an infant, moved her family. Her father, Jackie's father, left the family, so she was a single mother. Can you imagine traveling from Georgia to Pasadena, California, across the South with the family in those days? I mean, it had to be unbelievable. So I think Jackie's mother was pretty sensational too. But anyhow, getting back to Rachel, and so here they are. Rachel lived in Pasadena, and she went to college at UCLA, like Jackie did. And she never experienced any racial prejudice, really. Nothing hardly at all. And now they're going to go across the South to go to spring training in Florida. And they got bumped. They went to, I think it was in Alabama or somewhere, and she had to use the restroom. And she went to the restroom, but she went to what's called the white restroom, not the colored restroom. And because of that, they bumped them off of the plane.
Wow.
And they ended up taking a bus from there to Florida. So it was crazy. Yeah.
Jackie was more sensitive than she was. Am I correct? She had not sensitive to the world, sensitive to what the world wrought on both of them.
Yes, she was. Rachel was a very educated lady. I mean, she was also taught at Yale University. She was a nurse. She had a lot of things she did. And she was pretty grounded and really good for him. I mean, terrific.
Okay. What would have Jackie been if he wasn't an athlete?
I don't know what he would have been, because he was an All-American in football. He was an All-American in basketball. He broke the world record in broad jump and track, and he played baseball. And baseball was not his sport.
And tennis, he was almost an all-American.
Golf, he was a tremendous athlete. The reason he picked baseball because they had the Negro Leagues. There were no African Americans in basketball or football at that time. So that's why he picked baseball.
Okay. What were his interests away from baseball?
He was very active in civil rights and very active in politics. And he was a Republican, which was very unusual for an African American to be a Republican. But he was like what you would call a Nelson Rockefeller Republican, who today Rockefeller probably would have been thrown out of the Republican Party.
He would have been a left-wing Democrat.
Absolutely. Yeah.
With his credit. If it weren't for sports, what do you think he would have gravitated to career-wise?
I think civil rights or something like that. He was very instrumental. I always, when I'm talking about him, everybody knows he played baseball, he broke the color line and all of that. But a lot of people don't realize what he did after baseball. I mean, he used to go down to the South and help rebuild churches that were burned to the ground. He started a bank in Harlem called the Harlem Freedom National Bank because other financial institutions were elevating their interest rates to African Americans. He started a construction company to build homes for African Americans. So he did so many things with civil rights and helping others. And he was very vocal. You know, as a ball player, he couldn't fight back. The first couple of years were pretty lonely for him. And thank God he had Rachel there. But after he was able to fight back, he used to fight back plenty good to the umpires and everybody else. But he's an amazing guy.
He regretted not getting the opportunity to manage. And I think he took that with him to the grave.
Yes, he would have loved to manage. Matter of fact, he talked to me a couple times about that he would love it after his. And a lot of people felt that he would be a tremendous manager. But because of his color and because baseball wasn't moving fast enough, he was passed up. Interestingly, the first African-American manager was also named Robinson, Frank Robinson.
That's right.
One Robbie coming in, one Robbie going out, said the song.
That's right.
Still one of the greatest baseball songs going. Don't forget, in describing what Jackie did after leaving baseball, he became a vice president of Chock full of Nuts.
That's right.
And he really made a name for himself as if he didn't have a name already. He was tremendously successful at that.
Yes, he was. Chock full of Nuts had a lot of African American employees, and he was vice president of Chock full of Nuts.
Right, and he fought for the African American employee.
Yes, he did.
George, what do you have to say? What do you have to add?
Ron, which team, do you think would have brought in a black player had it not been for the Brooklyn Dodgers? Which team would have been the first to bring in a black player?
Great question.
All right, George, that's a good question. I don't know. It was Branch Rickey that did it, of course. Right. There were a couple others that had some tryouts, but no, it was. I don't know. I think that Major League Baseball.
I think it would have been Bill. I think it would have been Bill Veeck.
Yes, probably Bill Veeck. That's right. You're right. He was that. He was that type of guy. He was forthcoming and a good guy.
Didn't Bill Veeck have a plan to buy the Philadelphia Phillies and make them and bring a lot of black players on there? But then the president of the National League brought somebody else along to buy the team out from under Veeck, and so that never happened. Yeah,
that's right. That's right.
And he was the one that brought Larry Doby to the bigs, maybe very shortly after Jenkins.
Right.
Yes.
I don't think Larry Doby gets the recognition he should have, because he went through a lot of what Jackie went through. He came in maybe in the middle of the season sometime, not the beginning of the season, but it was the same 1947. Yeah.
Right. And after that, Vic brought in Satchel Paige.
Sure. Yeah.
And so that's my guess, if it weren't for Ricky. Can you tell me something about Ricky that we might not know?
Well, one of the things I know about Ricky, he was a baseball coach for, I think it was Illinois Wesleyan College. And they had an African-American catcher. And they were on the road playing games, and they went to this hotel, and they all registered in, and the manager said, well, he can't stay here. And Rand said, son, go up to my room and let me handle this. And he said, okay, don't rent him a room, let him sleep in my room. And the manager agreed. And when he came up to the room, this guy was crying. He was scratching his skin, saying, why do I have to be black? Why do I have to be black? And it left something on Branch Rickey.
Sure.
And that's why I think all through his life he remembered that experience.
And you think that was a contributing factor in him going to bat for Jackie?
Absolutely, no question about it.
Okay.
And the Negro Leagues were pretty successful in their own right. I mean, they were good players. I wish I'd have been old enough to have enjoyed them. However, I'm glad I'm not, because I'd probably be dead by now. but I mean, they were great stars. I mean, you had so many wonderful, and Branch Rickey had thought about bringing in Satchel Paige first, and he thought about bringing in, what's his name? He was such a great catcher.
Gibson.
Josh Gibson, yes, thank you. Yes, Josh Gibson. Or Jackie. Well, Josh Gibson was an alcoholic, and Satchel Paige was a womanizer. So he wanted someone that was pretty clean cut, who was religious, and that's why he picked, who was educated. That's why he picked Jackie.
I think even before Jackie, Branch Rickey had talked to Monty Irvin about breaking the color line. And
yes, he did.
The one provision that Branch Rickey had was that for the first year, Jackie or anyone picked would have to turn the other cheek to some of what went down. And Jackie promised that he would, but it was something Monty Irvin couldn't agree to. And I think that made the difference in who he chose. But if he hadn't turned the other cheek, the experiment wouldn't have worked. He had to show that he was beyond the barbs and the beanballs and the craziness, like you say, the black cat. Throw a black cat on the floor. That's really humane.
So terrible.
And
so terrible.
It was horrible. I think about what he went through. I think about the trip that they made, Rachel and Jackie, and to be thrown off an airplane because the woman wanted to use a bathroom that that's just crazy.
Well, I'll tell you a story. There was one time Jackie was coming to Milwaukee to speak, and he spoke in Birmingham, Alabama. So when he got done with his speech in Birmingham, he went to the airport for his flight to Milwaukee, and there was a big sign there, whites only, in the waiting room. And he sat down, and the police came and they were going to arrest him. And then when they found out he was Jackie Robinson, they left him alone. But when he came off the plane in Milwaukee, he was very disturbed. And he said to me, he said, Ronnie, if my name would have been George Smith or Paul Jones, I'd have been in jail today because of the color of my skin. Those are things we have to change.
Yeah. Imagine how that took a little piece of him. Every one of those instances, when I say he was sensitive, he took it all in.
Yes,
and I firmly believe that it contributed to his early demise.
I agree. He died at 53. He was a young man.
Yes.
He had suffered from diabetes for many years, and he had a heart attack, and he was blind in one eye and going blind in the other eye. I saw him in New York 6 months before he passed away. We were having lunch in New York. And he got out of that cab, and I was horrified because how he had deteriorated. And I had to take him by the arm and help him into this restaurant. And he was so happy to see me and wanted to hear all about my family, and I, of course, about his. And after lunch, I hailed him a cab, got him settled in the back seat, and I leaned in and I kissed him on the cheek and told him how much I loved him. And as that cab disappeared into space, I had tears running down my eyes because I knew that would be the last time I'd ever see him.
Yeah.
There was also the story of his last day on Earth when he came down the stairs and greeted Rachel.
Yes.
Tell me that
I love
story.
you. Yeah, he came down the stairs and he went into the kitchen where Rachel was, and he said, honey, I love you, and he dropped dead of a heart attack, a massive heart attack. He was naked, actually. He got out of bed, and he came down to tell her he loved her. And that was a true love story, the two of them. They really were a really true love story.
Well, they went through a lot together.
They all together. That's right.
Yeah. Boy, I get choked up over that one.
Yeah.
He knew he was struggling that last day.
He knew. Yeah, he knew.
I don't know if there was a warning to him, but he just had to share that one last moment with Rachel. And we should all be so happy in our relationships in life.
Yeah. Rachel told me that had he lived longer, they probably would have had to amputate his legs.
Yeah.
And in that respect, I'm glad he died when he did, because that would have been horrible for him.
Yeah.
Interesting that my father died a year apart from Jackie, either a year after or a year before, at age 62, and he suffered from diabetes. So And that's what ended up, complications from that is what ended up taking his life. So I know firsthand with a family how diabetes can affect one, and it's a horrible disease. And
horrible disease.
Yes.
And of course, they didn't know in those days as much as they do today about diabetes.
That's right.
And about treating it and things like that. But it's a horrible disease. Horrible.
Yeah. Ronnie, I'm going to let George finish it. I can't tell you how much I enjoy your company on every level.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
All right,
I appreciate it.
It's been 70-odd years now since Jackie Robinson broke the color barrier, and isn't it ironic that Major League Baseball is now concerned that black kids aren't interested in baseball anymore?
I know, it's sad. It's very sad. I remember going in neighborhoods, every corner they'd be playing baseball everywhere.
Right.
I used to love it, but they don't do it anymore. It's basketball, or something like that. And it's sad.
What a terrific show. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome. Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
Nice meeting with you.
Nice talking to you, too.
Thank your voice, the sincerity in your voice. I can't end with you. I got to keep you for one last moment. Tell me about the speeches. Tell me about the speeches you give and calling attention to Jackie's life to kids.
Yes. I've done that for many, many years. I work part-time for the Minnesota Twins, and they have tour groups that go through Target Field, and students and teachers. And I'm at Target Field about 25 times a year speaking to kids. And I also go to schools, grade schools, high schools, universities. I've been to George Washington University in Washington, D.C., I think 8 times. And because every year there's a different class. So it's been wonderful. I love talking to kids. And the first time I ever did, Ralph, there was an article in 1987. The Minneapolis Star and Tribune did a story about Jackie and I. And I got a call from a school, and I said, well, they asked if I wanted to come to speak. I said, I'd love to. So I go into this classroom, and I said, all right, kids, how many of you knew of Jackie Robinson? This little boy stood up and said, no, who is she? And I said, who is she? And then I realized they didn't know. And that was kind of the time that I became like the Pied Piper around the country, talking about Jackie. I didn't want anybody ever to forget him again. And it's been an amazing journey. It's been terrific. All these things that happened to me happened by accident. 1997, the Minneapolis Star and Tribune did another story. Then the Minnesota Twins invited Rachel to the Metrodome where the Twins were playing at that time to honor her and honor Jackie's memory, presenting a check for $50,000 to the Jackie Robinson Foundation. And I was invited to that press conference. I had never met Rachel before. And after the program, I went up to her and I said, Rachel, I'm Ronnie Rabinonowitz. And just like that, she hugged me and kissed me. She says, oh, my God, Jack loved you so much. And I showed her all my pictures and letters, and she was just thrilled. That night, she threw out the first pitch of the game, and then she came up in one of the suites, and we sat there for about 5 innings talking about our families. Magnificent lady. Just tremendous.
Wow.
Then Then I get a call in 2007 on the 60th anniversary. I get a call from USA Today. Now it becomes a big, big story all over the country. I'm getting calls from Canada and Texas and Florida and California, everywhere. And then I was invited to the Baseball Hall of Fame to be their guest and speak there. And that was an honor. I always wanted to go to the Hall of Fame. And then to be their guest was terrific. They took me down into the archive department, which is not open to the public. And I held Babe Ruth's bat, and I held Jackie's uniform. I actually broke into tears when I was holding his uniform. And I've been there twice. Then, interesting story. The Dodgers had two players that I loved. One was Juan Pierre, and the other was Orlando Hudson. Orlando Hudson had just been traded to the Dodgers. And he says, not only am I a Dodger, but I'm playing second base like Jackie. So I wanted to meet both of them. So I made arrangements through the Dodgers to get on the field during batting practice when the Dodgers were playing the Brewers in Milwaukee. And both those guys came over, and I showed them all the pictures and letters and everything. They just flipped. They loved it. Then this woman comes walking by, and she says, what's all this commotion here? And I showed her, and she turned out to be a producer for the MLB network. So she stayed in touch with me. And one day she called me and she said, our people love your story. We're going to do a documentary about it. I thought, my God, that'd be terrific. So they had Curtis Granderson as the host. And Dennis Haysbert, I don't know if you know that name. He's the African-American that does the Allstate commercials with that beautiful, deep voice.
Oh, I do. I used to teach traffic school, and his movies played a big Red Asphalt and all those movies.
Yeah.
Beautiful speaking voice. And
yes. So he read the letters off camera, and that it was called Letters from Jackie, and it was nominated for an Emmy. And I get a call from the History Theater in St. Paul, and they want to do a play about me. I said, you got to be kidding me. So they commissioned this big playwright from Los Angeles. His name is Eric Simonson. He wrote the Broadway hit Lombardi, which was on Broadway for a long time. So he wrote the play, and it was called The Incredible Season of Ron Rabinonowitz.
Wow.
And it was so surreal. There was someone playing my dad, my mom, Jackie Robinson, and Jack Kennedy. And to have this 13-year-old kid on stage, hi, I'm Ronnie Rabinowitz. It was so surreal for me.
Wow.
It was just terrific. And the other thing was there's an online paper called The Week. And they called me. They wanted to do an interview. And one day I get a call from Larry King's office. He wants me to come out and be his guest to be an interview. And I went out to L.A., and it was just thrilling, you know. He was a great guy. He loved baseball. He loved the Dodgers. Loved Jackie Robinson. So I did that. And then somebody in Mankato, Minnesota, which is about 70 miles south of Minneapolis, came to me and wanted to write the play, the book. It's a publisher in Mankato called The Creative Edition, Creative Company. So all those things have happened by accident, but it's amazing what a journey it's been.
Well, I think your good vibes have a lot to do rather than just by accident. You set up the world that you want to live in, and you did, Ronnie.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're my friend. And I'm glad George is my friend, too.
Yeah.
Because
I'm glad he is, too.
He doesn't mind that I hog the microphone. So with that in mind, George, finish it off.
It was good to be on with you, Ron. I think good things happen to good people, so that's why all these good things are happening to you, and it couldn't happen to a nicer person. And
thank you very much.
I hope we're able to talk again on the podcast. And
I hope so. That would be wonderful.
Stay well.
And I want to see your book, Ralph. I think you sent me a copy.
Well, you dropped me. I think I told you to.
Yeah, I gave you my address. And you were going to send it. Yeah. I'm anxious to see it. Wish you the best
send your address, and we'll get one out to you as soon as possible.
Okay. Thanks, Ralph.
Thank you, my friends. Thank you, both my friends. And George and I will be back next week. Love doing this with you, George. And this is fun. As was the writing of the book itself. You are a tremendous friend, and I'm very happy. Thank you, guys.
No problem, Ralph. Happy to be here. Happy to do it.
Beautiful. The name of the podcast is Comfortably Zoned in a Vat o' Pine Tar, the podcast, as opposed to the book by the same name. So we're doing a podcast
actually is a lot shorter than the book.
Right. 500 pages. So you got to be prepared to lift a heavy mother when you get it. All right.
I'm looking forward to it.
You will enjoy it because the stories in the book are real, and that's what makes it great. And the people we talk to, we get an insight that we think is pretty special. And the book's gotten some high acclaim. I'm riding high. Let's put it. Ronnie, we both had books come out basically at the same time.
Right? Isn't that something? And
that's
you,
nice.
my friend, are a very special person. You've introduced me to some wonderful people. George Case, Al Blumpkin, so many others, Peter Goldenbach, and now George Grimm. Thank you, my friend.
And Peter Trunk.
And Peter Trunk, right.
He is also a future guest on this podcast, also played an important role in not only the podcast network itself, but he's featured in the book, as are you, and you're an additive, Ronnie, as
Thank you. Thank you. Thanks, Ralph. All right.
Beautiful. Thanks again. We had a great podcast. This was Zygazone.
Well.
I don't know if George knows from Zygazone.
Oh, I know that. I know.
I'm sure he does. I'm sure he does.
All right. Love you both. Thank you very much. It's the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network. Comfortably Zoned in the Vat o' Pine Tar. My co-host is George Grimm, and the guest was the wonderful Ronnie Rabinonowitz.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, guys.
Happy trails, everybody, and
happy trails.
Stay well.
Thanks, Ralph. Send me a copy of it, will you?
I will indeed, as soon as I get your address.
Okay, I'll send it to you right now. Thank you.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. And like I say, both of you, stay well. That's the name of the game at our ages.
That's right. God bless.
All right. God. All right. Bye-bye. The
proceeding has been a Comfortably Zoned network production. You are advised to keep your dreams wet, your humor dry, your children and grandchildren out of military recruiting offices and off the laps of clerics who wear dresses. Thank you for listening, everyone. Happy trails.